recording. Okay, so everybody, we're going to record this session so that it can be shared again with other colleagues at your university. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You are welcome to turn on your cameras, but just keep it in mind that it's being recorded. That's all. Okay. So Inga.
Taip, tai sveiki visi, mėly kolegos, jau čia veidų matau labai nedaug, įsijungėte visi, bet vis tiek labai džiugu, kaip matyti, žinoti, kad esate čia, vis tiek kažkaip bent jau mane matote, jeigu aš jūsų ir nematau. Tai džiaugiuosi, nes pirmą kartą šiais metais, taip sakant, vienaip ar kitaip čia susisiekėme ir tada tikrai tik noriu dar palinkėti kiek įmanoma dar mums čia visiems toliau ištvermės ir gal kažkiek ir nežinau, ir kažkokio susitaikymo, nes turbūt jau čia irgi laukti, kad jau kažkas greitai labai pasikeis ir bus taip, kaip buvo, tai ne. Tai šiandien tą progą mes čia ir bandysime kalbėtis apie tai, kaip apie tą hibridinį vadinamą daugiau mokymą, kuris yra grinai jau šio laikmečio aktualija, nors taikomas, aišku, gali būti ne tik pandemijos laikotarpiu. And it's my pleasure actually to introduce Robert, already to some of us, a good friend and an old colleague and a wonderful lecturer, Robert O'Dowd from León University, Spain, who's got personal experience, Robert, in hybrid teaching and learning, and also your university last year, as you told, already more or less was delivering this type of studies quite widely spread. It's not, more or less we start this autumn. So there was quite a lot of stress, in this respect, and still is, I assume, because we do not have all that necessary equipment. So you'll talk and you'll support us and you calm us, I guess, in some aspects. Okay, and of course you'll introduce yourself as you wish, okay. But we are always happy. That's why I already do not present you in a very official and formal way, because to me you are already like any of these colleagues. When I see you like a member of staff during these 2 years, so you are most welcome. The floor is yours, and
Thank you very much, Inga, and thank you very much to you and your institution for inviting me to talk today. I see a lot already of familiar faces and familiar names, because I've worked with colleagues at the Vilnius University for a few times over the past 2 years, most of it online. Okay, I've only been to your beautiful city only once, but I'm going back again, I think, next month if COVID will allow it. And I just want to talk to you a little bit about today, about how it's going to work. First of all, I should say that this is like a Zoom, and this is something all of you will be aware of. It can go wrong at any time. Okay, so if all of a sudden my connection dies and you all are thrown out, please be patient and come back in again. Okay, using the same link. All right. I have I've asked Inga to follow the chat. Okay, you will see that the chat where you've all introduced yourselves. And if there is something that you want to say during my presentation stage, okay, don't be afraid to write it in there. And then Inga can maybe interrupt me or bring all these questions back to me near the end, because I won't notice the chat while I'm speaking to you. Okay. I'm going to try to make this as interactive as possible. Okay, so there are stages at the beginning, and then later on after my presentation, where you will have a chance to talk about and to give your opinions about what is happening. Okay. Also, I'm going to give you today a compilation of lots of pieces of advice and recommendations, but I don't want you to be stressed trying to write them down and make notes of them. Okay. So what I've done is I've put them together in a PDF document with a list of links as well, that I've given to Natalia and Inga, and they will share it with everybody afterwards. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that so much. Okay, so well, before I start talking to you about hybrid learning, okay, about what it is and how it works and how different universities are experiencing it, okay, I thought it would be nice to hear your thoughts about these things. Okay, about your impression, you as colleagues, as teachers, beginning to teach with online students and face-to-face students on campus at the same time. Okay, so I put into the into the chat there a Padlet, okay, which is something that many of you will be familiar with. Okay, a tablet is like a notice board, I suppose, where you can just write your ideas. Okay, and in that tablet, I ask you what questions or thoughts come to your mind as you move from online teaching, which is what you've been doing until recently, to hybrid teaching. Okay, what thoughts and questions come to your mind? Okay, I'd like to take a minute and see what some of you may be writing to that. Okay, don't answer it here in the stress. Okay, but poor person, right? Don't write it into the chat, but write it into the link, okay, that I've given you there in the chat. I'm going to put it in here again in case anybody missed it. You click on that and you will see the notice board appear. I can see people going there now. Okay, just write 1 or 2 sentences about your feelings, or the questions, shall we say, that come to mind. Very good. I can see messages beginning to appear already. Okay, I won't say anything for a couple of minutes while you guys write. So the 2 colleagues that have just arrived in, you can go to this link, okay, that I've put into the chat and answer the question there, okay? Okay, so far I can only see 1 message. Let's see if other people are writing their messages now. Don't have to be too long.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that, sorry, I'll put my camera on, that many people are replying to your message on Padlet in a reply kind of mode rather than adding.
Yeah, okay, well spotted. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
very good.
So I wasn't quite sure what we were supposed
that's
to
fine.
do.
Yeah, you can do that, or you can simply press, I should have pointed out, you can press the red button or the pink button in the corner of the screen, but it doesn't matter. We can also read it as a reply. Well done. Thank you for spotting that out. Okay. So, yeah, and there's some very interesting questions appearing here. How can I involve my students in discussions like we used to do in class? Okay. Stress is another word that comes up again. Need for teaching tools and techniques helping me to navigate that. Challenge, comfortability, connecting people in class and behind the screen. How to deal with both parts, especially during discussion, exercise, and tasks. Frustration, as I am used to draw a shot a lot. I used to draw a shot a lot, to draw a lot with my hands. I see. Okay, very good. That's a fair point. How to involve the students behind the screens more in the lectures. I have no experience yet. Okay, all right. So these are pretty general, I would say, general comments. Not general in the sense that they are not surprising. Okay. Difficult to manage discussion when participants are in class and behind the screen. Okay, right. Thank you for that. Okay, they are good points. Okay, and what they are is not surprising. Okay, that's what I would insist to you, that you are not alone. Okay, that's I think the most important thing for everybody to keep in mind at the moment. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, and so this is what we're going to look at. Just look at this before we begin going into the detail of it. Okay, I'm going to hide this so you can. There you go. Now, this is a survey that was carried out recently by the World Economic Forum, and look what it says. It says a quarter of adults worldwide believe that in 5 years, higher education in their country will be carried out completely online, and another half, believe it will take place both online and on site. Okay, so the idea of hybrid learning, I think, is people are beginning to accept is going to be part of our reality in the future as we move forward. And what has happened, I would suggest, with COVID is that it has pushed this faster. Okay, this was always going to come, but I think it has just pushed it faster than we originally expected. Yeah. But okay, so we've looked at that, right? So the topics for today, the things I thought we could look at today are, first of all, some definitions about what are we talking about, okay? Because we've got so many terms being used. Hybrid learning, blended learning, remote learning, flipped classroom, virtual mobility, okay? All of these terms are being used, okay? And I think probably the first thing we all should do is be very clear about what we are talking about, okay? That's probably the most important thing we could do at this stage. Secondly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through what I would suggest are some recommendations for good practice in your hybrid classroom. And now these will look at those comments that you made earlier on that Padlet. How to connect students in your class with students online, okay? What happens when you're used to drawing on the board a lot, and now you've got to slow down and stop doing that? How can you overcome things like that, okay? These are very practical recommendations that I've collected from lots of different publications about this and from my own experience, okay, of doing this over the past year. And then finally, we're going to think a little bit about students' perspectives, okay? Because all of the things that you've mentioned there, they're typical teacher responses, okay? We are teachers and we're thinking about our situation and how difficult it is for us, okay? But we're going to stop for a minute and try to think about the students' perspectives about this as well, okay? So there are the three things I want to do in the next 85 minutes or so, okay? So first of all, let's do a quick check on terminology, all right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a poll, okay? A poll in Zoom, it's like a little quiz, all right? And what you see there, that should appear in front of you now, okay, is a definition of some kind of online learning. And I want you to try and choose which of the three options I am talking about in each case, okay? So take a few minutes now to look at these and to go through them and see what we are talking about. Inga, can I just check with you to make sure that you can see the poll on your screen?
Yeah, I filled in, but submit, I cannot submit. When
you probably have to answer all the questions. That might be it.
Yeah, okay. Because when I push submit, it doesn't work.
Okay, I'll try to do all the questions and then submit.
There are more. I thought that it's on. Okay.
There are five.
To scroll. Yeah, but it works. Yeah.
Very good. People are submitting their answers now. They're appearing here. And at the end, I'll share you the results. Some of you that have done some courses with me online may be familiar with some of these definitions already. Okay, I'll give you another 30 seconds or so. Okay. Right, well, we're going to end the poll now. A lot of you have already submitted your answers, so let's just see, okay? So we end the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you. Okay, the first one, a temporary shift of delivery to an alternative mode due to crisis circumstances. That's emergency remote teaching, okay? So the majority got that one right, that's well done. A type of learning where students are introduced to the content at home and then practice working on it during class, the flipped classroom. Again, a majority got that one right, well done. We're going to see these in more detail now in a minute, so don't worry. Engaging students in online intercultural projects together and collaboration together is virtual exchange, all right? And when you have students following courses online from their home without physically leaving their home, that's virtual mobility, okay? That is, for example, what the case of a lot of you, I think you will have Erasmus students who may not this year travel to Vilnius, but they're going to follow your courses online and they're going to do your exams, okay? And then you will send those marks to the Erasmus office. Well, that is virtual mobility. Okay, that's what we refer to as virtual mobility. And I'm very happy to say that everybody got hybrid learning right, okay? Where you offer courses that can be attended either in person or online at the same time. Okay, very good. So we're going to stop sharing that now, and we're going to look at them one more time, okay? So these definitions of online models in higher education. So hybrid learning, so I won't spend too much time on this one because we all seem to know what it is. You've got online students, you've got in-class students, and you're trying to teach both of them at the same time, okay, using online technologies. The next one, blended learning is a more, shall we say, a more general title for any kind of learning that combines face-to-face and online learning experiences, okay? So we could say that hybrid learning is one type of blended learning. A flipped classroom is when students work on content at home, normally by watching videos, for example, of your classes. And then when they come to class, they focus on more interactive and more collaborative work and things like that. Right? So that's the flipped classroom. Virtual exchange, like I said, is online collaborative projects when students of mine in Leon maybe work with your students in Vilnius on topics related to their subjects. Okay, that's virtual exchange. Virtual mobility, like I said, is like when you do Erasmus, but without leaving your home. And remote learning is where the student and the teacher are both online, okay? This would, for example, what happened in Vilnius over the past couple of years, what happened in almost all of the world in the first year of COVID is an example of remote learning or emergency remote learning, okay? So these are the basic terms that we should be familiar with, okay? And at least be able to differentiate between them, all right? Especially things like virtual exchange and virtual mobility. We shouldn't confuse them. So hybrid learning, just to show you a little bit about where I'm coming from, my context, okay? So I'm Irish, all right? But I've worked at the University of Leon in Spain for about 20 years. And all of a sudden, last year, so when COVID first hit, of course, everybody was locked down and everything had to shift to remote teaching, completely online. But then last year in September, like many universities in Spain, the university said we would do hybrid learning, okay? So we had situations like you can see here with students sitting in class, wearing masks. We always had the windows open, which in Leon is not as cold as Vilnius, but it does get very cold, I can promise you. We had the windows open all the time, and we had to adapt to things. Now, okay, so let me just give you just a basic points, all right? So we had obviously obligatory masks. You can interrupt me and tell me if this is not what's going to be happening in Vilnius. Windows opened, reduced group sizes depending on the rooms. So if a group, for example, some of our classes will be very big, we might have 120 students in one class. In that case, what they agreed on was that half of them would come to class one week and half would stay at home and follow it online. And then the following week, the other class that had stayed at home would come to class and vice versa. Okay, so that's one way of dealing with large group sizes. Separations of tables, you will see on the picture on the left-hand side there, we tried to separate tables. I think it was 1.5 meters or something like that. I can't remember now. Okay, that, by the way, this year has been removed. Okay, so now we're piling back into classes again. Class webcams, like the one you can see on the right-hand side, that allowed me to, for example, sit down at my teacher's desk, and that camera that you can see would allow the students at home to log in through Google Classroom, Zoom, Teams, whatever it was. In some faculties, they did what we call mirror classrooms. I don't know if you're familiar with this term.
Ne, jis atsiuntė, žinai, ten į šitą.
Okay, someone's talking there.
Nu, į šitą.
Migle, can you mute your volume, please? Thank you.
Sorry.
So mirror classrooms, what they are is that you would have one class with the teacher and some of the students. And then in the room right next door, literally right next door, you would have the rest of the students who would be following the class online. So they were able to come to class, but they just wouldn't have the teacher in with them. They would have to follow it online, but in the classroom. Okay, so that's a way of getting all your students onto campus, but not all into the same room. Okay, so you can see different strategies being used. All right. So I'm not presenting this here today as the perfect model. Okay, and in fact, you will see later on in the small reports I show you from students, a lot of things could have been a lot better. All right, but just to show you that this is what is going on. It's not perfect, but it is happening. And at the end of the year, I think the feedback from students in general was very good, that they were able to keep coming to class, because we as teachers may be quite worried and stressed, just like the way you guys seem to be stressed at the moment based on your comments. The students appreciated being able to be on campus again, okay, for many different reasons that we can all imagine. Apart from the social reason, the fact that maybe they had found it very difficult to follow their classes online, okay, and there's a sense of isolation, etc., etc. Okay, so that would be, the main reasons for pushing for hybrid learning. Okay. Sorry, I'd missed one. So obligatory live streaming of classes. So, for example, I would always say to my students at the beginning of each course, you do not come to class if you are self-isolating or if you have COVID. You contact me, and I will provide you with a Zoom link. So students would write to me the day before class saying, Robert, I cannot come to class because I'm feeling ill or whatever. I would provide them with the Zoom link, and then that day, I would teach my class with them online, following it, and the other students in class. But what I would do, as you can see in the photo on the left-hand side, is that I would also ask the students in class also to connect to that Zoom meeting or that Teams meeting or whatever you want it to be. And then when it came to group work, I was able to connect the students at home with the students in class. All right. So, okay, so that's just a little bit of our background, okay, from Spain. All right. So I would think I would propose 3 key principles for a hybrid classroom. Okay, this is what I would propose to you today. First of all, don't have different standards of students. Strive to achieve that online and on-campus students have equal access to your lesson as much as possible. We have to avoid giving the sensation that students that are at home are somehow second-class citizens or second-class students. Okay, if we're going to do this properly, there shouldn't be. There should be 2 sets of students that can be engaged and have at least the same level of respect and attention from the teacher. Okay, at least this is what we should strive for. Okay, you are going to tell me easily said than done, and you are right. Okay, but we should strive for this. We should struggle to achieve it. Number 2, use this as an opportunity to use class time less for presentation and more for interaction and group work. Okay, presentations of materials can be pre-recorded. Okay, and students can watch them before class or watch them after class, depending on whether it makes sense. Okay, why do I suggest this? I suggest this because if you are only with students in class, you can give your presentation and you can interact with them very spontaneously. You can see their reactions when they're understanding and when they're not understanding. But if you're just giving a presentation for all of your class and half of your students at home, you're going to lose them very quickly. Because as all of you know, these online lectures and these online webinars, they tire very quickly. Okay, they make you tired very quickly. So we have to keep that in mind and maybe try to focus on how to make our time with our students more interactive and more collaborative. Okay. Again, easily said than done, Robert. Yes, you are very right. Okay. Number 3, try to break down the barriers between the two groups of students. Find ways to connect online and on-campus students in pair and group work. Okay, that's what I showed you in the photo earlier on in the previous slide. We've got to try to find ways of connecting the students that are in class with those that are at home. And I'm going to go now through a series of ideas, suggestions that will try to do that. Okay, but if I was asked for my 3 principles of hybrid classroom, these would be them. Okay, these were the ones that I would propose to you. Right. So, okay, just in relation to this, right? I'm going to hide this now. Hide floating control bar. In relation to this, there's some very interesting articles and blog posts about hybrid teaching, and the more you read them, you more realize that, like I said, that we are all in the same boat here. You know, teachers are struggling to do the best they can to, you know, to learn how to do this. Okay, but this one I think is very interesting. And what this colleague says is, sorry, I'll go back. If you look in the middle, she says, but they're talking about students' experiences of online learning, and blended learning. Their most positive experiences depended more on the number of opportunities for student-instructor interaction than on the type of learning environment involved. Okay, so it didn't matter if they were in class or if they were online. The important thing was the opportunities they had to interact and to participate in their classes. Okay, how instructors and students organized and spent class time, and the amount of feedback and direct interaction mattered more than the use of technology. Okay, so we can spend an awful lot of time worrying about our technologies, but at the end of the day, what students are wanting to do is they want to feel involved, and they want to have opportunities to interact. Okay, and what we might find is that by using online technologies more in our classes, students will be able to be more participative than if it was just a simple in-class session. Because as you all know, there are students that are comfortable interacting in classroom settings, but others are not. Others prefer to sit back, they feel shy, they don't feel confident, they're afraid of looking stupid or whatever. If they have ways of interacting with their teacher and with their classmates in online settings, they may become more active, more participative. Okay, so and so another question we can think about is, how can we connect online and on-campus students together in the classwork? Okay, I say, what are your ideas? I hope you guys are thinking about this already. Okay, this is one of the things I'm going to come back to at the end when I ask you to go into group work. Right, but how can we somehow get both sets of students interacting together? Right, let's have a look at some ideas. Okay, engaging both online and on-campus students in classwork. Okay, first of all, by the way, I'm going now into a few lists of recommendations, but like I said, I've put all of these into a PDF document. All right, so you don't have to worry about writing them down or anything like that. If you're interested in them, you will have them at the end of the course. First of all, arrange for a on-campus students to come to class with laptops and to log into your team's Zoom meeting with their online classmates. Okay, so essentially what we are doing is, even though we're having class on campus, the meeting point where everybody comes together is in your, I will say Teams, because I know in Vilnius you use Teams a lot, right? Is your Teams meeting. Okay, that's where everybody is there. And what we noticed in Leon is that before COVID, very few students would come to class with laptops, but since COVID, everybody does. And well, if it's not a laptop, it's a tablet or an iPad or something like that. This will be the first thing to do, to ask your students to do at the beginning of your course. Organize group work in Teams or in Zoom, which explicitly connects students online with students in the classroom. So before you start putting students into groups, you would find out, identify which student is in class and which student is at home. Maybe you do that by asking them to, when they name themselves in their little boxes, you could say, you call yourself Rita home or Rita in class or something like that. And that way, you know who is in class and who is in at home, and then you can start putting them into groups where they are mixed, all right? And I can promise you this works really, really well. They really appreciate it, and the students at home really appreciate it. And it's a way of keeping them, like I said, keeping them involved. Now, somebody said in the original, in your Padlet, somebody said used to drawing on the board, okay? I can promise you that this is, for me at least, and I think for many teachers, was one of the biggest challenges of hybrid learning, is that in my class, I'm used to getting up, walking around, walking in between the students, looking at what they're doing, then going up to the board, scribbling something. You have to keep in mind that if you're going to be doing that, depending on the technology that you are using, the students at home will lose you, okay? Your students at home are going to are not going to see you, and if you start moving far away from your laptop or from whatever you're using to if you're not using a microphone or something like that, they're not going to hear you either. And and even though I as a teacher, I'm aware of that, sometimes in the middle of the class I will get excited about something, or I want to do something, and I will forget that I have maybe 10 people trying to follow me online. And sooner or later, what I notice is that one of the students in class will say, Robert, the guys at home are telling me that they can't hear you, or whatever, something like that, So this is the big challenge. So how do you avoid that? Or how do you deal with that? Ideally, what you do is maybe you would use less your blackboard that you have, or whiteboard, whatever you happen to have in your classroom, and start using something like a Google Jamboard or a Google document, or something that you have in Teams, like a blank sheet or in Teams, and get used to that, using that as your whiteboard, okay, as your writing space or your drawing space, okay. And again, this takes time to get used to. You have to get used to it and to practice it, right? But that is one way of doing it. Also, I would recommend that you introduce regular polls, just like the one I asked you to do with the quiz, which are open to both sets of students, okay? And if possible, if you have a way of creating teams, in the sense of creating groups of students doing quizzes together, then try to get a home student and an in-class student, in that team together and things like that, okay? Okay, also, another thing, what I found is that students often connected with their home student friends by WhatsApp, okay? So that allowed them, so if somebody said, for example, when you're teaching, it's very difficult to see students in the waiting room, for example, or something like that of your meeting, right? So a student of mine in class might say, Robert, Laura, who is at home today, she wants to join the class, but you have to let her in, okay? So I would then go and do that, okay? So there has to be maybe a fluidity of communication between the two sets of students and you encourage your students to say, let me know if something stops working, or let me know if a student needs to come in, or if they can't hear me, or something like that. You have to be upfront about this, okay? I think a general point that I've read about, and that is very true as well, is to be honest with your students at the beginning of this, that you are not an expert in hybrid learning or teaching, the same way they are not experts in hybrid learning. And this is a learning process for all of you, and that there's a certain amount of collaboration involved, okay? Speaking of people joining, right, now. Another point I would urge you to consider is not to underestimate the value of asynchronous group work, okay? So for example, forums. You all use Moodle in Vilnius, I know. You have forums. But forums are something I think that are often, and I've spoken about this and we've looked at this in our online courses that I've done with Vilnius, they are often not very well run by colleagues, okay, but they are, I think they should be considered as a serious option now in the hybrid context, okay, for obvious reasons. Asynchronous discussion allows students time to think and reflect before responding, okay. Also, when you get a text-based forum, you as a teacher can look back later on, and the students can look back later on at the conversations. When our online conversations, very often in Teams or in Zoom, these are lost. People are not going to sit down and watch a conversation again for an hour in order to hear things again. They support shy learners and those with difficulties using microphones, cameras. Okay, they are, you know, if you're going to have students at home, I don't know what the situation, I'm quite ignorant, I'm afraid, about Lithuania, but if there are, shall we say, rural areas in Lithuania where your students are following you, maybe bandwidth, okay, the internet connectivity is an issue. And if it is, this is a way of ensuring that students can participate. Okay, so we all loved Zoom and Teams during the lockdown, okay, but there is a growing tendency. If you look at on the internet, on the communities about online teaching, there's a growing tendency to say, okay, these are obviously big advances in online teaching, but they are not the only solution, okay? So I think Inga mentioned at the beginning that a lot of you are going to have online Erasmus students, okay? So that means you're going to have students following your courses from other countries, right? Well, keep this, you know, keep these points in mind, okay? Synchronous meetings are biased against time zones, all right? Synchronous meetings are culturally unaware, okay? So you are going to have asynchronous classes when people who are living in their home countries maybe have a national holiday or something like that. Synchronous meetings are biased against families and busy people, right? So because as you all know, and I'm sure you've all experienced, trying to participate in collaborative, communicative Zoom meetings or team meetings with your children running around behind you, or your dogs and your cats jumping up on top of you. And I've seen many cats and many dogs in my courses in Vilnius, and more than children, actually, I think, for some reason. I don't know why, about anyway. And okay, synchronous meetings, of course, also favor native speakers, okay, or people that are more fluent, okay. People that are maybe not so fluent in the language may find it difficult to participate. All right, so, you know, let's keep these in mind, that Zoom and Team and video conferencing, you know, are obviously part of hybrid learning, but asynchronous forums and communication should also be considered a part. Just look at this. This is a very recent study. There are lots of studies coming out about this now, about Zoom fatigue and the dangers of Zoom and things like that. And these two colleagues looked at reasons for not turning on cameras. Okay, so I see most of you today don't have your cameras on, and that's normal, I suppose, because it's a webinar. It's not meant to be very interactive. But in your classroom, I know that from experience, many teachers will say to their students, I want you to turn on your cameras, okay? But, you know, I think we need to think about this. Look at the reasons on the left why students did not want to turn on their cameras. I was concerned about my appearance. I was concerned about other people being seen behind me. My internet connection was weak, okay? I was concerned about my physical location. Maybe people are living in a poorer area or somewhere that they don't feel is appropriate for others to see, okay? So while we as teachers would say, I want my students to turn on their cameras so they will participate, so they'll be active, so they will be engaged, so I can control them, shall we say, a little bit more like I can the normal students in my class. Think about, there are maybe good reasons for students not turning on their cameras. Anyway, now this lady over here, Jenna, I'm not too sure, Cohn, she works in the United States, and she produced on Twitter about 4 weeks ago or so a beautiful list of recommendations for hybrid teaching, okay? And I've taken some of them and I've put them here, okay? But I want to recognize that this is her work, much of this, okay? But she makes some very interesting, good points. And again, all of these are going to be on this document that you're going to receive later on. First of all, learn as much as you can about whatever video conferencing system you are using. Practice on your own things like sharing a screen, picking an audio source, picking a video source, putting up links, sharing resources in the chat. So, you know, these things require practice, okay? And even now, I know after 2 years, some of us are still maybe not very comfortable with these things. And especially when you're sitting in front of a group of students, you're nervous, you're uncomfortable because you're doing this for the first time. You know, this kind of, you know, it's good to be comfortable, at least with the application you are using, okay? The second point relates to one of my principles. She says, do not say that online participants are people who are not here today. They are here. It's just that their bodies are not in the room. Okay, this is a really good point. Okay, this is what I'm talking about: first class and second class citizens. Let's you know, stop this, right? Simply refer to your online participants as online participants and acknowledge their presence from the beginning. Always begin your class with, who is joining us from home today? Okay, if they have the cameras on, try and display them on the classroom screen so everybody can see them. So, you know, this is a really good thing that you start off your day by, you know, your class by saying, welcome everybody. Who do we have at home today? You know, maybe if you can turn on your camera, or at least say hello in the chat. Okay, so just acknowledge people and bring them into the whole online interaction from the beginning. Ask online and on-site participants to state their names before they start speaking. That way everyone knows who is speaking. So, for example, if students in your class start, you know, go to say something, well, the students at home mightn't be able to see who is speaking, okay? So just say, you know, okay, this is Robert and I think, whatever, even the people in class. Explain at the start of your course how you will include everybody. What will that look like? That means suggesting online participants have a device to log into, okay? Think of the online space as a shared space, not the physical classroom. This again is a little bit similar to what I was saying to you, that by having a common space, whether it's a Google document or one of those Google Jamboards, which are like, you know, blank boards where you can write, something like that. You know, by having one of them as your shared space, then everybody is on equal terms, okay? If your blackboard or your whiteboard in your classroom is your shared space, then some people have more access to it than other people do, all right? And we don't want we want to avoid that, okay? Okay, some more recommendations from other sources, all right? Everything is going to take longer, okay? Plan accordingly. Don't over plan and build in time, and be sure to build in time into your planning for longer transitions between movements in the agenda, okay? So if you have your agenda or your lesson plan, and you've got 3 or 4 things you want to do that day, consider that it might take about 5 minutes to move from one thing to the next, okay? Because you're opening up screens, you're explaining to people how it's going to be done, you're checking that the people at home have understood you, etc., etc. Okay, so things are going to go a little bit more slowly, okay? And that is okay, all right? That is to be expected. Try not to express frustration about the technology, especially if it goes wrong, okay? When you are leading class, you might feel nervous about looking incompetent. Just explain that you're learning. That's good modeling, okay? So you may have to be upfront about this, like I said earlier, and say, look, this is my first time trying to deal with students in 2 contexts at the same time. I'm sorry, I've now I'm going to start this again, whatever. Okay, don't, you know, I think it's okay. Students will respect that, all right? And I think students will be able to, will be patient with you, and you will probably find that they are quite willing to help you, like I said, by pointing out when things go wrong and things like that. Give your remote learners a variety of ways to demonstrate that they are engaged during your lessons, okay? Just because their screens are turned off, that doesn't mean they are not there. You can encourage them to unmute, to use the chat box, to put up their hands and vote, okay? To do polls, quizzes, you know, do as many things as you can that keep the students at home involved, because the danger is that they begin to feel that they are second-class students, right? That they are being left out, that you are only talking to the people in front of you in your class. And that's what you don't want to happen. How do you avoid that? you include them by giving them opportunities to participate. Okay, and like I said, like they say here, to speak, to use the chat box, to use reactions, to do it, try to have maybe 3 or 4 different things that you do regularly in your classes, maybe a poll or a game on one of these quiz apps that we can use, like Socrative or something like that. And students will get used to these quite quickly, and they will know that from time to time there's a quiz coming up, or from time to time they have to vote, or from time to time they are going to be put into breakout rooms with a specific question to discuss. Okay, and after 2 or 3 weeks, there you got it. There you've got your rhythm going of your class that involves both sets of students. Okay, and it doesn't have to be every week a new tool. Okay, don't do that. There are millions of tools out there, millions of interactive tools that help communication, but you don't have to waste your time and waste your students' time learning a new one every week. Okay, that isn't necessary. Pardon me. For platforms with chat, such as Zoom, ask students to help monitor chat, ask questions, and call items to the attention of the class as a whole. Okay, so that's like I've asked Inga at the start of the course today. I said, Inga, if somebody types into the chat while I'm talking, please call my attention to it. Okay, or please point and tell me what they're saying, because when you are presenting like I am now, you cannot be checking the chat all the time. Okay. All right. One last set. Okay, this comes from another source called Strategies for Teaching Students Online and Face-to-Face at the Same Time. Okay, these are very practical. Okay, some of these you will maybe, I don't know if you'll laugh at them, but they are much more very practical. Okay, create routines. Give your students a sense of routine and stability by starting your days the same way. All right. And like I said, have 2 or 3 interactive activities that are used commonly. Okay, so students are comfortable with that. Make sure your classroom has sufficient Wi-Fi for both sets of students, because if you want your students that are in the classroom to take part, okay, make sure that they have sufficient Wi-Fi, and if not, then your institution should be told about that. This is one that I hadn't thought of. But if you're going to be teaching with masks, okay, which we haven't spoken about this, but this, let's face it, it's, I won't say a rude word, it's a pain, okay, it's annoying. So one way of, and your reaction sometimes is if students can't hear you, you go to remove it or something. Of course, that is what we shouldn't do, right, if we're trying to stay safe. So one suggestion here is have a water bottle with a straw, so you don't have to take off your mask to drink. Okay, so with the straw, you can avoid that issue. Okay, I thought that was a very practical one that I hadn't thought of before. Get a rolling table for your laptop. A rolling table means a table with wheels on it, so that you can focus your camera on different parts of the room, maybe. Okay, so if so you can move your laptop around. If you're going to, for whatever reason, you need to move and need to be with a certain group of students, you can bring your laptop with you. Okay. Have fun with the new situation. Get students to say hi or wave to the students at home. Okay, I do this, and they do enjoy it. Okay, I always said at the beginning, you kind of make it in a fun way. Who's joining us from home today? Everybody, and then you would point to one of your students in class. You say, "Are any of your friends up there?" "Yes, that's my friend Laura." "We'll wave to Laura," and there's a joke about that. Okay, but it gets people to into the mindset of that we are together, even though we are not in the same space. Verbally repeat questions and comments made by face-to-face students so remote ones can hear them. That means if you're in a big classroom with lots of people in your class and somebody at the back of the room asks a question, well, you're sitting in front of your screen here, and you might say, that's a good question by Rita. Rita has just asked, whatever. And that way the people that are listening to you online will hear the question again. Okay, so it's this constant, shall we say, struggle or attempt to keep the online students involved in what is happening in the classroom. Okay, face-to-face students need headphones so they can work in pairs. Well, headphones, even small ones like the ones I'm wearing here today. Okay, so that when you start doing group work between the students in class and the students at home, that everybody's not going to be hearing what's coming out of the computers. Okay, so like I said, these are very practical but I think they are useful suggestions. Okay. Now, one more thing. In a few minutes now, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to get you into groups to talk about these. So have a look, to read again through these list of suggestions, and to talk about them. How useful are they for you? Any new ideas or something like that? But you know, I thought this is another nice article I came across, and this lady points out, you know, let's not forget the important the good things that have come out of online teaching. Okay, and underlined here you can see some examples about what she means. So we've discovered valuable innovations in remote teaching that are worth keeping. Bringing in guest lecturers, and maybe some of you have already done that. You invited somebody to join your class via Zoom, a guest lecturer, right? The benefits of virtual office hours. Okay, virtual office hours. Well, I imagine you know what they mean, where you, instead of having students coming to your office, you meet them in Zoom at a certain time each week. Okay. The advantages of more creative assessments, okay, and different things like that. Let's keep in mind the good things that we discovered by online teaching and try to integrate them now into this new area. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do now. Okay, I've created a Google document that I'm going to share with everybody. And it has a list of all of those suggestions and recommendations that I pointed out to you, right? And what I'm going to ask, I'm going to put you into working groups that you can discuss together in English or in Lithuanian, whatever you feel comfortable doing. And I'd like you to think about, you know, which ones might be useful for you or which ones you hadn't thought of before, or you just discuss your reactions to them, okay? And then when I come back, I'm going to ask some of you to report about what you came up with. Okay, so let me see. Stop sharing. I'm going to get the link, and I'm going to put it into the chat here. Okay, so everybody can click on that and open it up.
Robert?
Yes, Inga.
Could I, for a short break, I've got a question.
Sure.
I don't know if the colleagues have. In the chat, there are no,
Yep.
questions, but still, you know, I've been listening and I've been wondering also, you know, about the experience of our teachers. And I want just to ask you one question, which is like this, you know, you always loved technology, yeah? I mean, before pandemic. That's how we met, yeah?
Yes.
You used it in your face-to-face classrooms and saw the advantage of it, yeah? So you are really one of those teachers who are quite, you know, friendly and so to say comfortable with it, yeah?
Okay.
That's what you do. And my question would be, you know, I'm speaking now about Leon experience, yeah? Not all teachers, I assume, were like you, yeah? In Leon also, there were teachers perhaps before pandemic who were not that much in technology usage, weren't they? Yeah?
Yeah, okay, I see where you're going.
Yeah, but let me finish, yeah? Let me finish. And yeah, and what about average teacher? You know, average teacher, I mean, in terms of, you know, friendliness with technology, when they start this hybrid, yeah, teaching, you know, because these things you are saying, they are very important. It's interaction, yeah? That's what matters in teaching and learning. In face-to-face, especially, you know, it's important on virtual, you know, environment. But, you know, for the teacher who is average, you know, with technology usage and still, you know, so to say, not comfortable, you know, how to coordinate, you know, what to do with the arm, yeah, how to roll the table, what about the microphone? So my question would be, is it really possible for this type of teacher to start and do proper hybrid learning on his or her own. What I mean is, for instance, last week I talked to my colleague from Leipzig, yeah, and they also had this Leipzig University, and they also had this experience a kind of last year, and she said, oh, this year it's not that much stress, we already, you know, start, and people, you know more or less how teachers how to do it. But she said, and I said, okay, can they do it on their own, teachers, can they do it, you know, on their own, this type of teaching? And she said, well, we recommend at least, you know, for the teacher that he or she should ask the student to read the chat. That's what you asked me to do, yeah? In this particular, though it's not hybrid learning in this case, yeah? So the question is, yeah, how much it is realistic, in what time, and perhaps up to certain extent, you know, and what expectations, I mean, a teacher should have for himself or herself, depending on this. Do you understand my question?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I would begin by answer this question by thinking about what happened when COVID originally hit. Okay, my department. Okay, when COVID and the first lockdown happened, we all had to go immediately to online teaching. Okay, I imagine the same as in Vilnius, and I remember thinking, my God, I have so many colleagues in my department who have never used a computer in their classes before. Okay, they wouldn't even know how to use Moodle, I imagine. Okay, and if they do, it would be just to upload their PowerPoint or something very basic. And I'm thinking, how are they going to survive? And incredibly, in the space of 2 to 3 weeks, all of my colleagues were online using Zoom or Google Classroom, and were, you know, doing these type of things. So I think the first part of my answer to your question is necessity is the source of invention and the source of innovation, okay, in our parts, right? So necessity can force, I think, people that are even not very familiar or don't enjoy using technology, it can force them to use it and get used to it. The second thing, however, is that the big problem was not learning how to use technology. The big thing is adopting your teaching style to make it more collaborative and interactive and things like that. That is, I think, a bigger challenge for many colleagues that would prefer to, or more comfortable going to their classes and just giving a lecture, okay, for 60 minutes. That I think is it will cause more of a challenge, because students, like I said, won't engage that way, you know, and they will feel isolated that way. And that's what I found when we come back from our group, your group talk. I'm going to show you some feedback from students in Leon, and that was the big complaint, that teachers didn't try to engage with the students. All right, that was the big issue. People didn't say the teachers were bad using technology, okay, all right, because that isn't the issue. Yeah, the issue is that teachers didn't engage and give students opportunities to collaborate and participate. So, did I answer your question, Inga?
Well, to a certain extent. I also, you know, my argument would be, I would argue that even to use Padlet, it's a kind of technology. You know, that's how you make students interactive. You need, you know, some time and skills to get from them.
Yes, yeah. But people can, if they want to. They will.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, but this hybrid learning, do you agree that it's a particular challenge? I mean, when you do it really properly, you know, because, well, I still claim, you know, that you need, you know, somehow to master this technology to think about interactivity. But when you still are not sure how to use the right hand and the left hand, and still, you know, to interact students, this type of issue, yeah, this involvement. So I think it's a big challenge, and I think that that we should have to ourselves reasonable expectations. I mean, teachers.
Of course.
Don't you think so?
Definitely. It is definitely, and that's why I kept saying, be honest with your students and admit that this is a learning process for you too.
Okay, thank you.
I think students will appreciate that. Okay, so everybody, you should all now have access to the link. Okay, and you can see in the link, I have basically put a list of how many? 18 recommendations, the ones that we have just spoken about in different ways. Okay, And what I'm going to give you some time now in your groups to maybe read them again, because I've had to obviously rush through them, okay? And it's hard to remember or think about any of them in that way. And I'd just like you in your group to talk about them. Say, okay, this one is useful. I hadn't thought about this. Or, you know, this one doesn't make sense to me, or I won't be doing it that way. Okay, I'd just like you to discuss this with some of your colleagues together. Maybe you get to know people from your university by doing it, okay? It's 3 minutes past. Okay. It's 3 minutes past 3 now. Oh, sorry, 3 minutes past 2 in Vilnius, right? I'm going to give you 12 minutes, okay, or a little bit more, maybe 13 minutes to do this, okay? So let me put you into your groups, breakout rooms. Now, there you go, 3 to 4 people in each one. So now you should have an invitation, okay, to join, okay? And I'll call you back again in a few minutes to hear your ideas. So we still have Ramune, Bile, Cristina, Almira, Salunias. Are you there, guys? Can you hear me? Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So everybody, welcome back.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Jolanta. Nice to see you again.
Hello, Robert.
I'm looking at lots of familiar faces here. That's very nice. Okay. Okay. Well, Jolanta, why don't you begin? Tell me in your room, what did you talk about? What was your discussion? You have to turn on your mic, Jolanta.
Together with colleagues, Regina from Šiauliai and Raimondas from the Faculty of Mathematics, we discussed a couple of things. So first of all, tips that you shared with us regarding increasing interaction between students and teacher. And we find this really useful, that basically to think how to use technology on the one hand in the classroom and maybe at home, make Teams as the central or Zoom as the central point. So by now, more or less, everybody tried those technologies, also quizzes, polls to keep interaction. We also came to another point in our discussion regarding social skills of the students and also for the professors. It seems, and we share this idea, that it is increasing, the focus on technology is increasing more and more for teachers to use technology, students use it, but at the same time, social connection is kind of deteriorating between teacher and students. Of course, you were saying that it's very important to treat them the same, but so this also, let's call it human touch, social connection during hybrid learning. That is something that plays also in our minds, hybrid learning and human still experience, you know.
I understand. It's a very good point. This is, I mean, this is one of the struggles, right? To try and have a human connection with people that are online. Yeah. But I think we have to try, and even if we're not 100% successful, I think there are ways that can, make things a little bit easier. But anyway, Jolanta, thank you for that. Okay. Egle, I recognize you too. Hi, can you tell us about your conversation?
Yes, absolutely. So we might not have spent our time extremely wisely, but anyway, because we had the organizer of this forum with us now in our little group. So we were discussing the stuff that can be done, how the university can support the teachers in this journey. And both my colleague from Cholet University and myself, we were of the opinion that, as I say, teachers of a certain generation, older generation like me, although I'm not all that old, but anyway, so we don't necessarily have many skills in terms of working with simple apps. And, if we could have more support in introducing us to all sorts of different apps like Padlet or whatever, and sort of keep repeating, because, I might learn one aspect of Padlet, but then I wouldn't actually go exploring more of Padlet unless I was accompanied or encouraged somehow in some way, or was in a group where, if I allocated time for this, like this hour, the 5 of us are going to explore other features of, whatever online teaching that might be. And also the other thing is that, so I suppose that was the most important thing. And my colleague had a bad experience this week with hybrid teaching. And it also came down to the fact that our university apparently doesn't have technology that actually supports that all that well. But that said, she thought that your recommendations in terms of trying to create connections and treating both sets of students the same required a lot of planning, required a lot of preparation, but that they were potentially very useful. So that's that.
Okay, good. All right, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. Vaida, how are you? Vaida Kirkiliauskaite.
Yes, I'm good. I would like to reflect a little bit to Egle, because I'm that younger generation, I guess. So in my second year experience already, I can see that it's not possible to help teacher if he doesn't want. I mean, that older generation, they just put everything, like we teach, 2 of us teach the same class, and my colleague, he just says, you will do this. Like 1 week there is no streaming, another week if I'm teaching it's streaming. So it's, and it just doesn't work. I mean, maybe you can force it by coming to classes and then giving some recommendations to those teachers. But if you will make such thing like this course, they just, I don't believe they will come. So it's just my small.
I'm sorry, I will interrupt, but I am here. We are here. So we are, like you can't, we have turned up. So
I agree, but I mean all that the majority probably who is in Vilnius University, how many teachers we have and how many we have here. So, but yeah, so I agree with you also, but can have different opinion. Okay. And what about our group? I guess Vita actually was ready to summarize, so maybe it's
please, okay, go ahead. Yeah, Vita.
Thank you, Vaida, because Vaida has said one of the biggest issue we dealt about during our discussion. The other challenge is the technological challenge, when we have to ensure the sound and the view quality. So the quality of the sound is very important for us for recordings and for others who are joining our virtual class. At the same time, we are not sure if all faculties and all study programs have enough appropriate technological equipment already. For example, in one faculty, we heard that it's only one classroom ready for hybrid teaching. And our faculty, Šiauliai Academy, we have like 5 or 7 classrooms already prepared with specific microphones, cameras, and so on. So it depends on the faculty's readiness, I guess, to prepare environment appropriate for hybrid teaching. Yeah. The other thing is about the connection, what you have mentioned, dear Robert, about connection of classroom, of students in the classroom, bringing their own computers. So the challenge is, I guess, in this case, as my colleagues mentioned, that sometimes not all students may afford a computer or tablet to have in the classroom. Our colleague was considering if headphones would help all participants in the classroom and out of the classroom to have a good sound quality. The other issue we were talking about, it was activity of students to participate in some surveys or polls or quiz. Because if you have a huge group of students in one course, sometimes they are feeling that somebody else will fulfill this poll and I don't need to do it by myself. So our colleague suggested to have the poll or form using Teams, which enables teacher to see how many of the classroom students already fulfilled the poll, and then to say, okay, we have like 60% of answers, let's wait for others. So yeah. This was her suggestion. Okay. I guess from my own side, having very small experience of teaching like hybrid, but it was not identified as hybrid teaching, because last autumn we had a situation of a small part of students who had isolation, so they could not come to the classroom, and my colleague said that some of students broke the leg and he cannot come to her classroom. So the problem is that even we didn't know that we are doing already this type of teaching, but we did. The problem was the technology, first of all, because we did not have needed equipment. So we played with 2 equipment, our personal smartphone and the computer in the classroom. The other thing is to use some kind of other equipment like Teams or Moodle system to open some tasks for students the whole day, with the time limits for task submission. So we discussed that it's really a huge, I guess, stress for the teacher. And at the same time, it's like very big requirement for multitasking. As you become technologists, IT specialists, as well as you have to think about the content of your lecture or your seminar and to give the right feedback to your students. So it's multitasking and very challenging. So I'm very grateful for you, Professor, for giving this nice lecture for us.
Thank you, Vita, and some nice ideas there too. And you're very right. I would be worried if you cannot get students to even participate in online polls, which is literally just pressing a button, right? I mean, if we cannot get them to even do that, then there's a serious issue, I think. But I appreciate time is running out. And that we've only programmed 90 minutes. But I just want to finish by showing you, everybody, the feedback, some of the feedback that we got in Leon to these hybrid situation. Okay, and I'm going to show you this as basically as a warning. Okay, but I think it also highlights some of the things that I was talking about today. Okay, I'm sorry, excuse me while I organize my tools here. Now, okay, so you should be able to see this. All right, I'm going to skip this one, and I'm going. These are the feedback that we got from students in Leon. Okay, one of my students did a kind of a study about how to the experience of students and hybrid learning and stuff, and this is what they told us. Just have a look at these things here, with these comments. Online teaching requires the professors be modernized in ICT, information communication technologies. Since the more technological abilities they have, better a class can be. Online activities can be more up-to-date than book activities, and it could seem more appealing for our generations. Okay, so this one shows that students think there's potential, okay, because these are a lot more interactive and more appealing, as they say, than just learning from a book. However, the only thing that, this is another comment by another student, the only thing that professors do is sharing a stream link through platforms such as Google Meet or Zoom, while conducting the class as normal in the classroom. I do not have the feeling of being in class, since the professor is delivering his or her speech to those students who are attending the online lesson. Now, this is what I'm worried about. This is what I fear. It should not be hybrid learning. This idea that the teacher walks in, sits down in front of in front of the class, puts on the camera, and then gives a normal lecture. Okay, that is not hybrid learning. Okay. I consider empathy, said another person. I considered empathy of great relevance in online classes. Most of the teachers did not have it and continued with the normal rhythm of the ordinary on-site classes. Again, a reminder that students at home need to be involved, included, and respected. Okay, and that means adapting our classes to them as well. And finally, perhaps online or blended learning could have been used to do more interactive online activities. So that's what students are asking for, okay? The type of things that I tried to talk to you about today, these are the things that that students are asking for, okay? And well, we'll skip that. So I'm going to finish now. Thank you very much. Like I said, that document that you have been discussing now is in PDF format, and Inga and Victoria will make sure that you all receive a copy of it, okay? And I think I will be in Vilnius in a couple of weeks' time, doing a workshop about blended learning and talking more about these issues, and maybe spending more time developing those apps, working on those apps like Egle suggested we should do, okay? So thank you very much again for coming and for inviting me to talk at your institution today.
Thank you, Robert. Thanks a lot. I think that all colleagues